everyone. My name is Lila Mahmood, and on behalf of STARS, I'd like to thank you all for joining today's press call. We are very excited to introduce you to some of the cast members and the creator of the final chapter of the epic Spartacus franchise, Spartacus War of the Damned, the third season. Joining us today, we have the creator, writer, and executive producer, Stephen S. DeKnight. We also have Dan Feuerriegel joining us as Agron. We also have the star of the show in the title lead, Liam McIntyre, as Spartacus. And then we have Simon Merrells, who has joined the cast this season as Crassus.
We don't press anything, do we, darling?
We're just recipients of these wonderful questions.
Fantastic.
So just kick back and relax.
I am. I'm having breakfast right now.
Oh, nice.
Right, and that's an interesting question. Creator of a show is a bit of a technical term in U.S. television. It's whoever writes the pilot ends up being the creator. So the idea to do Spartacus like 300 was pre-sold by Rob Tapert, Josh Donnan, and Sam Raimi to Starz. And then they dug me up to actually write the pilot to figure out what the story was. I did not know really that much about this time period. My knowledge of Spartacus started and ended with the Kirk Douglas movie. So it was a daunting task, but once I started reading about Spartacus, I discovered that not a lot was known about him, so there was a lot of room for interpretation. And we had a lot of early discussions about what makes relevant today, since unlike the Kirk Douglas version, we didn't have the Red Scare, we didn't have McCarthyism or the blacklist or naming names. So how was it relevant? And the approach that I wanted to take was to explore the widening gap between haves and have-nots throughout the world, and really do a parallel with what I consider an economic slave class that's been created in modern days, where you have the extremely rich and the middle class has been, for all intents and purposes, obliterated, and then you have a working slave class that's barely getting by. And that's really the tack that I want to take. And a couple of seasons later, that's when Occupy Wall Street happened, which really brought this all to the forefront, and then Arab Spring. And it just really showed how relevant Spartacus still is. What can you expect to see in this third and last season? A triumph and tragedy, basically. We jump about 6 months forward in the story to where Spartacus has taken his small band of rebels and expanded it into thousands. And we really go to the war aspect of Spartacus in history, where it started out small and then it snowballed, and then, depending on what accounts you hear, Spartacus ended up with anywhere from 40,000 to 120,000 soldiers in his rebel army. And
how many can we afford?
Yeah, and I really wanted to hit as many of these amazing points in history that I read about as I could. We had to reshuffle some events and timelines, and condense historical characters to fit it all into 10 episodes. But I really wanted to definitely get that flavor of what actually happened in the history, and I think we did a pretty good job. But for me, one of the most important things tackling this season is it's kind of like the sinking of the Titanic. Everybody knows how it ends, but it's how do you get there, and how do you have a satisfying experience for an audience that has followed you for 4 years, when the ending is not exactly classically uplifting, I would say.
Come on now.
That was really the biggest challenge, and having seen the finale, I think we carried it off quite well. It has all the power and the tragedy, but it is uplifting at the very end.
For my money, I'm looking at an extremely ripped Simon Merrells in front of my computer screen, so you can look forward to that this season.
Well, I was certainly uplifted by the ending, but...
There's an edit they didn't tell you about. They've changed a few things in that ending.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's why you dressed me up on the last day. I see. Yeah, that strange costume. Yeah,
You looked good that time.
You look great. It didn't happen. If anyone's writing that down, that didn't actually happen.
No, that's just banter. Just banter.
Yeah, it's our pantomime Spartacus episode.
That has been a big question. The question, do we go Inglorious Bastards and kill Hitler?
We got Hitler now? I didn't see him.
And I got to tell you, it was very tempting because nothing delighted me more to get to the end of Glorious Bastards and, have history rewritten. It was a complete shock and surprise. On this one, we do stick pretty close to history. Now, that said, most people think Spartacus was crucified, which historically he wasn't. That was done in the Kirk Douglas movie. Excuse me. So, again, it was that challenge. It was the sinking of the Titanic challenge. Interestingly enough, we titled the final episode of the series "Victory," which has a slight tinge of irony in it. What I really wanted to explore is how do Spartacus and his rebels gain victory in the face of defeat, and conversely, how do Crassus and Caesar and the Romans suffer a defeat even though they are victorious. So victory is a very slippery word for everyone by the time we get to that finale. And
I got to say, reading the last couple of scripts, though, that there was a lot of times when I was like, I don't know, is that what? Wow, is that where are we going with this? Like, there's certainly a lot of shocks and suspense in terms of how the ending actually plays itself out, though.
Yeah, which is exactly what you want from a story. And like I said, I've seen the rough cut of the finale, and I think it's one of our finest episodes. It is so incredibly difficult to end a series on the right foot. And
you're welcome, Stephen.
I got to tell you, everybody from top to bottom, just I think it from the director to the actors to every single element. I think it's some of the best work of the entire series.
Even Dan did well.
even Dan afforded himself.
Well, I got to save it up for some time.
Yeah, no, you would do mighty fine. Well, in a way, it's just the fact that you realize early on that you're just not going to have any kind of a life for the whole shooting of the show. I mean, that's from a personal point of view. Does you wake up at 4, get into work, do a full day of work. Everyone told me that TV was all about waiting. For my character, that didn't really. It wasn't. It wasn't anything. And then you get you finish work, you go to the gym, you train for an hour or two, and then you go home. You learn your script for the next couple of days and recap what you've done and try to improve yourself. And so then it's 10 o'clock and you're only going to get 6 hours sleep and wake up again. So it's grueling. The stunts are grueling. The psychological journey can be grueling. But he's one of the greatest characters in history, so I'm a pretty lucky man. So it's all very hard, but none of it is difficult. None of it's work, if you know what I mean. Well, I mean, for me, it was, it's completely changed my life. This show's been touched by such tragedy with the loss of Andy Whitfield, and in the same breath, my life has been completely changed. And there's so many moments in that last season where it's just truly humbling. I mean, personally, I want to hear from Dan and see how he feels, because he's been there the entire time. He's been there from season 1. So, I mean, how was it for you, buddy?
It was pretty full on. It was, especially towards the end, it became such a family unit that when it was all finally over, it was like the ending of an era. It was like the breakup of a family, so to speak.
That was hard.
And like some of the final days were really like the parallels of real life and what was going on in the script and on the screen in the final days was so similar that it was quite harrowing, and it helped fantastically in regards to like acting and all that, and performance. But it was towards the end very, very emotional because you knew it was coming to an end. It was draining emotionally due to what was on the page and what you had to do. But just like you, Liam, it changed my life. It's changed everybody's life.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair call. Yeah. It was a weird sense of disbelief that it was really finishing, but it was, I don't know, in a way it was kind of deeply satisfying that you knew you could tell the story and complete that story. I don't know, it was that challenge of getting through the personal anguish of going, with all these people, we've all redefined who we are as actors, as crew members, as writers, whatever that may be. And yet here we have this seldom given opportunity to really complete a story on television and give someone give the people watching a total story that can be satisfying on the whole.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, like Simon over there, he's come in for one season, been incredible, and then had to jump out again. Is that weird? I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't know if I had one season and what would happen.
Like I said to you guys at the time, I can only imagine what it must have been like to do 2 seasons in your shoes, Liam, and certainly 4 for a lot of other people. I mean, I just did, as I came in on the last season, did the last series, had a fantastic character, had a life-changing experience, body change, mentally challenging, but I've never felt so welcomed and supported, and just one of the jobs of a lifetime for me. I mean, just one series, I'll never forget it. And
I guess we're exceptionally lucky to have iconic characters that are truly have stood the test of history. It's quite a challenge, but also wonderful.
You read about those guys, their lives, and it's all there. It's almost like no invention necessary.
Yeah, it's astounding that there are people like that.
The events of their lives are extraordinary enough.
Yeah,
it's incredible, really. Yeah, extraordinary gig.
Well, it's just, I mean, he's got such a impossible journey. It's interesting. I mean, because the thing that constantly comes back to me that just shocks me is the idea that Spartacus, this man, possibly from Thrace, if we go on those sources, eventually came from a slave class, rose up to lead so many disparate different countries' people, all suffering, but just the idea that almost all of these countries are at war, and yet the people from those countries sort of rose up with this one man to almost change the world. And I guess if you played the long game, in many ways, kind of did. Andy played him so well in the first season, where he's this noble person that was living free that suddenly put under the heel of the Roman Republic, and he's got this agonizing journey to try and reunite with his wife, and the events that transpire through that first season, and then he's left in this uncertain freedom of breaking out of this slavery, but to what, and then you're literally left hanging on that moment. And then I had to come in here into the second season and find out, and sort of decide what he was going to do with that. And I think one of the things that makes Spartacus quite interesting is that he's not just your classic Superman hero type. He's not just a let's do the greater good for the greater good. But that was kind of his journey in that second season, was learning that it's not just about him and his personal vengeance, his personal pain, that he's got to see the bigger picture and see that there's so many other people suffering as he does, or worse in some cases. And so the second season for me was very much about, learning how to take control, to be responsible for your own actions and be responsible for others, and realize that, you've been given this unique opportunity to, do something that is very important, and you're the only person, you're uniquely in that position to do it. I mean, funnily enough, Dan was talking about, life imitating art in some ways. There's a lot of this show for me, from the first day of getting to the boot camp in Spartacus and thinking, how am I going to be able to match all these alpha male actors, and try to be that leader of men in any sense, when that's just not the person I could see myself being up until that point. And then, again, through that season, learning how to eventually be the lead of a show is a weird experience, like, that I've never experienced. And so there was these weird, similarities between what was happening in my life and what was happening on the screen. And then in the War of the Damned, he's made another jump again at the end of Vengeance. He's left on this precipice of, okay, so you've sort of earned your freedom and you've got people behind you. Now what? Are you going to leave it here, or are you going to truly embrace your destiny and be the leader that you've learned to become more wholeheartedly? And I guess that's where we pick up Spartacus and his journey in War of the Damned. He is no longer a person of questions or doubts. He knows what he has to do, and he knows he's the only one that can do it. And it's a matter of steeling your will to that grim task, or that near impossible task of taking on the greatest military power of the time. And that requires a no-nonsense approach from Spartacus. So he's very get down to business in a way that he hasn't been before. And the hard part's for you as an actor to find those moments where he can be, what am I doing? Where he has those doubts. But it's weird, like in all that, and then the second season for me as an actor, it became more, okay, I've done one, I've got this, and I am that guy, and that's who I'm, it was felt more, I felt more in control of my destiny as that character. And so it's weird, again, how life imitates art in some of those ways. But, he becomes a very, very strong, very dedicated, very direct person in this last season. And it's very satisfying to play him.
God, I look up to plenty of people. I've got loads of actors who I think are fantastic. And yeah, there seems to be a tradition of sorts going back over the years of, lucky British actors being invited over to have a pop and doing all right, So, I've just done this series, which, as I said before, has been one of the jobs of a lifetime. I feel transformed by it. It was so exciting and such a fantastic bunch of people to work with. I'm coming over this weekend for the premiere and going to spend a week there, my first time in LA. So it's I just find it a very exciting time. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone again. Seeing the episode in cinema and maybe meeting a few people over there. And seeing what happens, having a few meetings. It feels kind of an open playing field at the moment. So it's very exciting.
Maybe you could follow all other British actors and become the next Spider-Man when that next comes up.
Yeah, I mean, I was joking with the director the other day. I was saying, oh, you're English. You want to play a villain? Yeah, sure. I'm fine. I'm happy with that. You don't mind being typecast? No, I don't mind. I don't mind at all.
That's right. Aussies will just be the superheroes.
Oh, yeah, no, but not with your accent. Like Australians, if you can do another accent, maybe we can cut.
Yeah, if you can do a British accent, you'll be a superhero.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just not if you Australian. Do you think Australian accents just sound a bit lazy on film for some reason? They're just like they're not trying hard enough. I don't know.
Well, a lot of Aussies have done very well in the States as well, haven't they?
Yeah, but they're not. You wouldn't know they're Australian.
No, exactly.
That's we're the chameleons of cinema.
Very, very well into an American accent. Yeah. No,
we're men. Okay, we're men.
I'd love to play a Spartacus as an Australian, though. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, I thought you were. That was a joke. That was a joke.
Well, Rome grinds us beneath heel, mate. Come on. Oh, Dusters love that.
Well, as a lot of people probably know, Marcus Licinius Crassus is a real historical figure, an extraordinary figure amongst many extraordinary figures from Roman history. Far and away the richest man in Rome. Started off with a certain amount of wealth, but made his extraordinary wealth himself through various means, and historically he was the man they turned to after Spartacus had defeated several Roman generals, and he was the only one to succeed. So as far as playing him as a villain, of course, for this series, of course, he's going to be seen as the villain because he's the adversary of Spartacus, so therefore he's the villain. But I didn't think of him as a villain. I thought of him as a determined, passionate, patriotic, and self-interested Roman who was fighting for the Republic. I mean, they were under real threat. I mean, slaves outnumbered Romans 2-1 or something like that. So it was reaching a point where we're really in danger of losing everything. And Spartacus and his army could take over Rome and smash the whole thing. So, in that sense, I don't see him as a villain. Of course, he was extremely ruthless and did some things which we would find just abhorrent and ridiculously, vicious and ruthless. But the difference between, say, a natural sadist, somebody who commits acts because they're inherently evil, and somebody who does something because they believe that they're strategically or tactically necessary, I'd put Crassus in that last camp. So, yes, to a lot of people, he's going to be the villain. But when I was playing him, that wasn't uppermost in my mind. I just thought, I've got to end this rebellion.
I always saw that you followed a rich tradition of what Stephen's written in Villains, that ultimately there's that awkward part that every viewer goes, where that awkward moment where the viewer says, wait on, who am I going for? Because, I saw your Crassus as a man who, was ruthless, but ultimately was just trying to do what he needed to do to get by in a world that was equally tough for him. I think earlier in the season you sort of explained, you set out your parameters by which the Romans judge you, and that sort of, I thought that was amazing.
It's not that he didn't have self-interest, but I've got to say, as an actor, I was so gifted by Stephen's writing and the other writers' storylines for Crassus, because you're allowed to show him as a man who cares for his family, a man who's capable of feeling deep romantic love, a man who can weep because at certain times, because of certain things that affect him. He's not a cold stone, of a man. So I was gifted with that, really.
Historically, didn't they? I mean, he was the wealthiest man in Rome, but they resented him for that, didn't they? Wasn't that how that?
Yeah, there was a certain amount of resentment, as there would be now, I guess, to an Onassis or a whoever, who is frowned upon by maybe the old aristocracy. Look to people who've made their money in other ways. They look down on them. But
how did you try to frame him, Stephen? Like, is that what you were going for as well?
Yeah, I mean, to me, the most important thing about bringing Crassus in is that, we created, through the previous 3 seasons, Crassus is like the Roman boogeyman. Everyone's afraid of Crassus.
Kaiser Soze. I know it.
Kaiser Soze,
yeah. Crassus Soze.
It was really important for me. I've seen other portrayals of Crassus, some very successful, some not so successful. But it seemed every portrayal of Crassus, he was practically emotionless and, a villain. And I really wanted to explore, Crassus as a man first, that he has to do this thing. He wants to do this thing for reasons that'll become apparent in the season. There are several reasons why he's doing this thing. But the most important thing for me was to find the humanity in him, to find, the relationships and how there was a struggle going on within his own heart. It wasn't all just about, kill Spartacus. That would have been dramatically uninteresting. You have to, Liam, like you were saying, at some point in the season, even though Crassus is trying to murder our beloved Spartacus and everyone around him, you start to feel for Crassus. There are things that happen to Crassus that, I think are very, very touching and gut-wrenching. And that definitely was very important to me. And Liam, like you said, I've always approached villains on this series as they don't think they're the villain. They think they're the hero. And Crassus actually has a line in the season where he talks about, history will decide who the villain is. He completely thinks he's doing the right thing because he's protecting the Republic and trying to further the power of the Republic. And Spartacus and his noble slaves aren't exactly noble.
Totally.
We really wanted to stick kind of close to history where the slave rebellion got very much out of hand, and there was raping and pillaging and murder. And, it wasn't just... It's not like the rebel army everybody had a high moral code.
No, I love that about our season. I think that in the original year, in the amazing Spartacus from the 60s, I think the one thing they sort of weren't able to convey was that perhaps more barbaric nature of elements of the rebellion. It didn't lend itself to the time.
It's morally complex, just like life. When the Russians, went back into Berlin after everything the Germans had done to them, they acted like brutes in Germany. But it was accepted. It was like, what do you expect after what, the Germans did to them in the East? And yet you can still look at what happened and think, God, that's barbaric. But, it's more interesting, I think, to have a villain with a heart and a hero who's...
For the dark side.
marred,
Yeah, absolutely. But, I've always loved that about
Well, that's everybody, though. That's life,
Yeah.
No one's just cut and dry. It's always grey and...
Well, yeah, but I've always wondered about, people when villains are almost written just as villains, because nobody wants to be a villain in their life. I presume almost everybody thinks of themselves as some sort of hero in some way. Everyone's doing, no matter how horrible you are, I'm sure in your own worldview, you're doing the right thing for whatever reason, even if it's horribly marred in reality.
Yeah, exactly.
Dan's my hero.
Oh, Dan. Tried.
You're welcome, Simon. You've been a fantastic protege.
Agron. I've got the T-shirt.
I want to get my Gannicus T-shirt back.
Well, the way I saw it was that back in first season, Spartacus gave him a second chance, gave him a chance at a life, and in a way, it's a life's debt. So that's how I saw it. That's why he is so loyal. And because also as well, excuse me, because he had such a strong, close relationship with his brother Duro, and you could see in that relationship he was the protector, he was loyal, he was making sure that he is okay, and I just think that's a big part of Agron's personality that drives him through life. And when he feels as though he owes to someone who aided in him being free, he felt as though he needs to be loyal. He owes a life debt to Spartacus.
Well, our relationship gets wonderfully complicated this year, though. I feel
it does.
Right.
It does. But yeah, that's how I see why Agron is so loyal. It's just a part of his personality, and to the people that he cares about, he will be loyal to the very end.
Well, I don't know about that. It's I guess you've got your key group of alpha male characters, but there's a lot of, I mean, not to forget, there's a lot of female characters that can come into play this year. You know, like the Saxers and the Naviers and other people that you might not have met yet. But like I was saying, you know, at that first boot camp, here I was, this guy desperately trying to get into shape for this role. You know, worried that I've got, you know, the world on my shoulders and all the, you know, I mean, in the test for getting the role in general, I had the mighty Manu Bennett stomp into my trailer, sit me down, and have a good long chat to me, which, you know, just is something that happens to you. You don't, you just let that happen. And so, I mean, as far as a naturally intimidating person, Manu is the most lovely person, but just on pure raw energy, you just go, oh my God, look at the size of his arms, and he's extremely intense. But, you know, but he was a beautiful man in that same process and getting me much more comfortable with the role. But there's all these seasoned, dominant men, and the show is about alpha male types, gladiators, you know, and each one is a sort of a different kind of alpha male. Spartacus is his own kind of, you know, the thinking man's alpha male, if you will. Crassus is the raw emotional alpha male. Agron is the more caring alpha male in some regards. Gannicus is the, you know, the happy-go-lucky, free-spirited alpha male. But they're all very dominant men in their own right, and that's, I guess, why they become the leaders of this rebellion. So from a character's point of view, Spartacus knows he has to assert his authority and has to maintain control of these people, because when he has a vision, as it were, of what they're capable of, and for all intents and purposes, he's quite right of what they can achieve. However, when you have that many strong men together, it's very hard to keep everyone on the same page, because everyone wants to be in control in some way. You know, so that's one of his, for all of the, you know, for every season, something that he battles with, whether it's Andy and Manu in that first season where they're sitting down on the bench in the training square talking about how they would possibly overthrow the Ludus, through to last season where I cut a guy's face off, which is a clear message, and multiple times successfully and unsuccessfully this year, because the stakes are higher than ever. It's tough for Spartacus, and likewise for me as an actor. You know, when I was starting acting, I never thought in a million years I'd ever be an action hero of some kind, which is a weird sentence to say. But here I am, you know, being Spartacus, which, you know, you either put up or shut up. And there's again, with so many wonderful male actors, you don't have a choice. You have to bring the goods, or they will show you up. So, you know, you just have to do your best. It's quite a strange experience, but it's also amazingly fun, because you've got, you know, it's like a boys' club sometimes. Obviously, there are lots of fantastic female characters, but there are times when it's just you and the boys, and, you know, it's a bit schoolyard. Great.
Right. Well, again, Spartacus, the concept was pre-sold before I came on board. Rob Tapper, Josh Donnan, and the amazing Sam Raimi, they approached Starz with this kooky idea about, hey, how about we do Spartacus, but we film everything on green screen, and we'll do it like 300. And they said, great. And so the next step was...
is that how a show gets made these days?
Yeah. The next part was...
Great idea to have more women in it, though. Yeah. That was a great idea.
The next step was to find a writer to develop a story. So they contacted me. I was working on Dollhouse at the time, and I had a great meeting over at Starz. Rob Tapper was on speakerphone from New Zealand, and at the end of the meeting, Starz said, great, when can you start? Actually, they said, can you start Monday? I said, no, I can't start for 8 weeks. I'm writing and directing an episode of Dollhouse. So we actually parted ways. They said, thank you very much. We can't wait that long. And, you know, the job was over. it was about 6 weeks later, I was on the set halfway through directing for Dollhouse when my agents popped up on set, which is usually either very good or very bad. And they said, hey, Starz called us. They haven't found anybody else they like. Are you still interested? And I said, hell yeah. So I finished editing on a Friday and started Spartacus on a Monday. I didn't know anything about this time period when I was first approached about the show. You know, my knowledge of it started and ended with the Douglas movie, which I loved. And I felt it was a very daunting task to approach it because I loved that movie so much. But once I started reading the actual facts that were known about Spartacus, which is very, very little, you can read it in pretty much one sitting, all the fragments. And all the fragments were basically, you know, this battle and who died and who won. And there was very little of the emotional side of Spartacus and, you know, that kind of character work, which I found so exciting. And that's what really, really drew me to the project, is the opportunity to explore the whys and the emotions behind what happened in this amazing historical event. And, you know, a lot of people have said it's so different from what you've done on other shows, but, you know, it's actually very much the same, especially when you look at shows like Buffy and Angel, which, you know, was never about the monster of the week, just like Spartacus is never about the fight of the week. It's always about the emotions and how the events illuminate the characters, which is something that, you know, was very important in Spartacus, especially in that first season, where, yes, there were gladiator battles, but it was the desires, the emotions, the needs that were behind each of these fights that I think made them spectacular. You know, the outcome, there was something weighing in the balance of the outcome, something bigger than just the fight. And that's something we tried to carry through all the way through, especially in this final season. This final season was tricky because it's a war. There are gigantic battles, and trying to keep that emotional need when there's thousands of people fighting is exponentially more difficult. But I think we managed to pull it off, and certainly with a lot of help from some fantastic actors, I think we've managed to nail it.
He's talking about Simon, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Of course.
Is anyone else first experience of Rob Tappert on speakerphone? Mine was. He's amazing.
No.
That was my first experience.
He's such an amazing character. He'll just leave a conversation in the middle of the conversation. I've never met anyone quite like it. He's amazing.
And to go off on a side tangent, you know, Rob Tappert, I think, is the unsung hero of Spartacus.
Oh, he's a genius.
I mean, he really championed it, and I got to tell you, you know, my writers and I work out of Los Angeles, and the actors can back me up on this. When you guys have read scripts, I'm sure every single time you read it and you think, how the hell are we going to do this?
Oh, my God. Especially this season. This season, I just, about two episodes in, I just threw it out and went, well, good luck. I'll turn up, but come on now.
We come up with, you know, very challenging stories for production, and somehow Rob and the crew and the cast managed to pull it off in New Zealand.
It's amazing that it got done, really.
Well, Jacobson directed the last episode, and I literally watched his hair change colour.
Jesse, he's always getting shot. Oh, no, that was not Jesse.
Oh, Jesse's also everyone got stressed. It was good, though. It was literally impossible, though. You do understand what you wrote was impossible to film, right?
That series finale is a perfect example. Because, honestly, I finished it and looked at it, and I said, well, we can't shoot this. This is just too gigantic. But somehow, you know, with a few snips and trims and tucks here and there, somehow managed to do it. And not only managed to do it, but I got to say, managed to do it in a spectacular fashion.
Yeah, I also got to watch it and went, holy mother of Jesus God, that was impossible. Like, it still doesn't, look like it still doesn't look like it was possible to film. I was there, and I went, we couldn't have done that. Like that's
You've
no way.
seen the last episode, Liam?
I may have. Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah,
right.
I mean,
we'll chat later.
They didn't seem to me, but what do I know? There didn't seem to be many corners being cut. That was
they weren't. That's what's ridiculous.
Not at all.
It was not. The opposite. They were shooting extra stuff. Like I was talking to the director, going, "You sure? Because we don't have time to shoot any of this. Why are we doing this?" But he's like, "We need it for the story," and sure enough, yeah, he was right. And
great on that.
Oh yeah, no, I've never. But in the same way, I've never seen anyone in my whole life pull together the way that crew did to make that happen. God. If they could get work for the rest of their lives, it wouldn't be enough.
I wouldn't call it a frustrating process. Early in my career, it was a frustrating process to discover, what do you mean you can't shoot this massive fight that I've just written? I remember the first one of those that I did on Buffy. In an outline, I wrote this massive fight, and was very disappointed when I was told, this is a fantastic fight. It'll take a week to shoot, which you can't do on television unless you're in Spartacus, and then you take a week to shoot a fight. So it's always been a challenge, and we always approach it by having a discussion about okay, what can we do, what can't we do, and then we find ways to do what we can't do. Yeah. There's many examples of that in this season. One of the tricks we had to do this season is we had to park the army somewhere for a length of episodes, so we could actually build standing sets. So it wasn't always we're on a plane or a vista where there's CGI backgrounds 100% of the time. So we took a page from history. Historically, Spartacus and his band of rebels capture and hold a Roman city. So we took that page from history and had them capture a city. It's not in the same place historically, but it worked for the story. So there's a lot of little things like that, but shockingly, despite budget and time constraints, somehow we always found a way to do it. There's no time during this season, which is a massive, massive season, that I felt like we keeped out on some spectacular thing we were trying to do, or I wrote something and it was told, no, we can't do it. I was told, I don't think we can do it, but we'll try. And sure enough, it certainly happens. And there are so many challenging episodes. Like Liam was saying, I don't think there's one episode that wasn't, gigantic.
Yeah, frankly, I could have been a little less, enormous, and I would have been fine with that. There were times when they were like, so we worked out a way for you to do this, so can you do this? And I'm like, what? Human beings can't do that. All right, give it a whirl. Yeah, they're like, just jump off this two-story building.
We don't also slow down and fight, like, midway through fights and, like, become slow motion as well. That doesn't happen in real life either, Liam.
Well, yeah, but that's someone else's job. That wasn't my job. My job was, like, then they put you on top of some mountain and went like, all right, so jump off there. I'm like, yeah, that's funny. For real? Okay. All right, give it a whirl then. This could be a short season. But, there were a few epic battles that you're like, you know what, this could be less epic, and I'd be fine with that. But, no, they always found a way to
I was so impressed by that, watching that from Vengeance, the Vesuvius sequences.
Oh, yeah.
With the vines, and all the more so because they did it.
Yeah, I know, and they were real vines, which are terrible to use on your hands. Dan, you can back me up.
If you saw that in a movie, you'd think, oh, come on. But they did it, Incredible.
That sure was something.
I remember reading a couple of comments of online about the Vesuvius thing, and people were, come on!
Really?
They climbed down the mountain with the vines. It's like, well, apparently.
Yeah, well, that's what they said in history.
Read the sources. It's there, you can choose to believe it or not, but,
Sounds good. Makes a good story.
Yeah. Yeah, and even though I've done the last season, so I know that this is all studio-based, I was watching those episodes thinking, oh, well, they did do a little bit of location then.
Yeah, no one can believe that we didn't. No one can believe that we didn't.
Fantastic. I
know. I was speaking to other friends, and they were like, "Oh, but obviously you're in New Zealand, so you're obviously shooting out in forests and so on." No, never, not even once. They're like, "Not once? No, not one single time."
Yeah,
it was so depressing.
I think I had vitamin D deficiency after the first season that I did.
I thought the sky was green eventually.
Makeup's fantastic though.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the recent tragedies in the U.S. Have been horrific, absolutely horrific. I have many thoughts on gun control and gun violence that I won't go into here. But I am firmly, when it comes to literature, movies, television, video games, I am firmly with Quentin Tarantino on my feeling about that, is that study after study after study has been done showing no correlation between that kind of violence and actual violence. The empirical evidence just is not there. And I also, just from a personal point of view, I grew up in a very bohemian family back in the 60s and 70s. And since before I could talk as a child, my parents were taking me to the drive-in, which was in New Jersey. It was our version of the New York Grindhouse. And I saw the most, to put it bluntly, fucked up, violent, sexually explicit movies that you could possibly imagine from that time period. And I am, despite the fact that I write, very violent stuff in Spartacus, I am the most non-violent man ever. I've never been in a fight. I'm just not a violent guy. And to me, part of it, I'm sure, was my upbringing. I was exposed to all that stuff, but I had a mother and a father, and, I was taught right from wrong.
Yeah, same story.
Yeah, that's the key. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just, yeah.
I think
my nephews and nieces have no problem differentiating between violent video games, which they know aren't real. They know it's not real violence. It's entertainment. Yeah.
And I play violent video games. I delight and cackle like a madman playing violent video games. I am horrified and sickened by actual violence.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've never been in a fight either, except in Spartacus, which is all. In fact, one stunt guy wanted me to punch him for real, and I've got footage of it. I can't do it. You see my sort of slappy hand slightly touch him, and I wince, and he just looks at me like I'm the biggest disappointment in the world.
We're just not wired that way. And not to get on the whole side issue of gun control, but you look at the UK, Japan, Australia. They have the same movies. They have the same video games. They have all the media that we have. But why are there so many fewer gun-related deaths? Well, it's because of guns. I mean, there's
that's basically it.
Well, I mean, in terms of Spartacus, though, I mean, with regards to the violence, I would feel dishonest if we didn't represent the actual time period as the actual time period. To pretend that gladiator battles didn't kill people would be dishonest.
It would be, and that's the position Rob Stafford and I came at it from. And right now I'm developing a futuristic military show for Star. And it has it's war. I am. It's a war. It has guns and weapons, and people get shot, and there's horrific death. But again, we didn't want to shy away from that. So to me, I think violence has its place in entertainment, in telling a story. Now, listen, I might disagree with certain horror movies that are kind of torture porn, they call them. It's not actually porn. I understand that, but, that's not my thing. I think it's a very slippery slope when you start to say, you can't portray this on a TV show. You can't do this in a movie. You can't write this in a book.
Well, then you get back to the 1960s Spartacus and all the stuff that was happening around then.
Exactly. I mean, that's the way that you're heading towards Big Brother. And listen, I'm fine with the Second Amendment. I'm not trying to take away everyone's guns in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. But even the Founding Fathers believed in some form of gun control. And, you know, again, not to go off on a political bent, but in the United States, it's a very bizarre situation where you have one statistically small group, the NRA, basically holding Congress hostage, and you know, through threat and intimidation, and that's exactly what it is. And
you know, I must say, yeah, it's from the outside. It's easy to look from the outside, but it is kind of bizarre because you understand tradition and the Constitution and the amendment, but wasn't that amendment made in a completely different world and scenario when it made sense to have militias because there was no national, you know, army or police force, or, you know, there were just towns with their militias, and they were different times, and it made sense.
And it was made when, you know, you had a musket that took 15 seconds to reload.
Yeah, not a Uzi.
There is. I mean, I am 100% with Piers Morgan on this one. Is that there is no reason for citizens to own military weapons. There's none. Absolutely none. And I'll end my comment on that one. Boy, now that's a question. Obviously, as the scripted writer in me, you know, the more reality shows there are, the less opportunities there are for writers like me. That said, there's a gazillion channels on TV, and I have no problem with reality shows. I often feel that, you know, sometimes they pander to the lowest common denominator, but that's true of scripted shows too. There are quite a few reality shows that I enjoy. You know, for me, it's more about like, you know, American Chopper, about building bikes and that kind of thing. I think there's plenty of room for both styles of entertainment, and you know, the pendulum keeps swinging back and forth. Reality TV took over, really kicked off by Survivor. The success of Survivor is when I saw, you know, the reality style show take over, especially network TV, and then it became predominantly reality shows, and then the numbers started to drop on those, and it swung back on the scripted side, and now I think it's struck a good balance. So, I mean, for me, ultimately, the marketplace decides, you know, what should and should not be on the air. And you look at the numbers for some reality shows like Duck Dynasty, which is a delightful show about these fellas that, you know, started a business with duck calls and got fabulously rich off it. That show, that half-hour show, their numbers are way better than our numbers for Sparty. Which in some ways is frustrating, but in other ways I understand. It's very easy to drop into an episode of that, and it's completely delightful. I enjoyed the hell out of it. You know, the short answer is I think there's room for everything. There are some reality shows I enjoy. There are some reality shows I hate, but that's the same thing as scripted TV. The spinoff. The spinoff. I've heard stories of the spinoff. You know, we talked about it. We've actually talked as we were wrapping up Spartacus, and we knew from Stars at the end of Spartacus Vengeance that 99% sure this next season would be the last one. Mm-hmm. So we started talking then about, you know, should we do a movie? Should we do 10 episodes and wrap everything up in a movie? And we felt like, well, that's kind of, you know, the movie audience that doesn't watch Spartacus would be coming in and they wouldn't get it. And it would feel a bit of a cheat to the TV audience. to say, now go pay for a movie and see the end of the series. So we dropped that idea. And then as we were working on this season, we loved the characters of Crassus and Caesar and the Roman side so much.
Yep.
We started kicking around the idea, well, you know, Crassus and Caesar have quite the story. Crassus, Caesar, Pompey, all the intrigue.
I'm loving hearing this.
And Caesar obviously being the easiest character to sell to an audience because he's the most recognizable. It's like, well, what about a Caesar spinoff? So it's been bandied about. There's no firm plans at the moment, but I think Stars and Rob and Josh and Sam and I, we all feel like this Spartacus world that's been created is so unique and specific in its storytelling approach and its visual style that it would be a shame not to do something else in that vein. You know, whether it's Caesar and Crassus, whether it's, you know, later in the history after the empire started, you know, who knows what form it could possibly take. But we would all love to see it live on.
Well, it's got my vote. I think those two characters are astounding. And I, as a fan from the first season, back before I was in it, I was like, I just wouldn't want. I agree with you. That world to end. So I'm crossing my fingers. You guys can make that happen.
I'm crossing fingers, arms, and legs.
And bank balances, right?
You know, I didn't relate any of the characters to leaders or actual figures from modern history. I purely approached it from just the feel of what was going on politically in the world. And again, for me, it all had to do with, especially in the United States, the fact that, you know, I think the figure is something like 43% of Americans have 99% of the wealth, which is just staggering. And the fact that the middle class has been, you know, shrinking for decades, and basically you have the very, very rich and the struggling working class poor. And I felt there was a great parallel there. That you have basically the very rich, the Romans, and the slave class, the working class. Now that's a very simplified view of it because not all Romans were rich. There were many, many Romans that were barely scraping by, and you know, hated the rich senatorial Romans just as much as the slaves did. And historically, that's why a lot of Romans actually helped the slaves, because they felt just as disenfranchised. But I didn't base it on any one person. With one exception, is Gladiator in season 1 was really based on me. I'm not
You're
really
foul tongue, Stephen.
Listen, I come from Jersey. I cursed up a blue streak, but in a kind of funny way. I'm not nearly as evil or clever or conniving as Gladiator, but that was the one character that was the closest to, you know, my inner voice. It also, not to go off the subject, but with Gladiator, my favorite part of the Kirk Douglas movie was Peter Ustinov, who I thought just stole the show with a really good portrayal. And I really wanted to bring that kind of thing to Gladiator. And I'm glad I did, because it really set up how we approached the quote-unquote villains for the entire series. And the trick with the villains is you start off hating them, then you start feeling, well, no, he's not so bad. He's just a guy. He's just a spy. And then they do something absolutely terrible. And you're left with this uncomfortable feeling where you really like the guy, but you hate the guy. I remember when we killed Gladiator in the season 1, people were absolutely outraged. How dare you? How could you kill him? He didn't deserve. People actually said he didn't deserve that. It's like this guy murdered women, children, I mean, anyone that got in his way. But, you know, it's half how you write the character and half the actor that portrays the character. And we've been very fortunate with Gladiators, with Slaver, and with this season with Crassus and Caesar. Just the perfect marriage of, you know, complicated characters and just brilliant performances.
This applies to Simon as well, actually. We were just talking about that before we
Why aren't you asking me if I've stopped going to the gym? Are you assuming that I would? He's English. He's stopped immediately.
He's no fool. Well, to cover that, I think we both had a Christmas. Well, all three of us, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, had an enjoyable Christmas. Dan and I have had a few years of not being allowed to eat anything that tasted nice.
Yes.
So I'm not ashamed to say that I ate far too much that tasted nice. But come the new year, that has all stopped, and I'm currently in a lot of pain. I was at the gym earlier today before this phone call. And, you know, if I spend all that time getting it, it seems like a kind of a shame to waste it.
I'm the same.
Once the show stopped, I just let myself relax a little bit and heal aching muscles, all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, you get into that routine of eating bad food and this and that. You feel bad about it, but you just don't care. But you do notice the difference after a while, and it is kind of difficult to get back into a routine because...
Yeah, it's currently 300 pounds.
So you're in a complete different routine.
True.
So, unlike Liam, I'd stopped. Yeah. I had Christmas, I had New Year's, just like Simon as well, and I have yet to start. However, I have done my best to keep up the good food, and that helps. But, with all the running around recently, I just haven't felt like I've had time. But
routine helps so much with stuff like
on Saturday, I will be going. But in regards to honourable moments, not memorable, not honourable.
Moments of honour.
I've told a couple of people this. I'd say like the entire experience was memorable for me. There wasn't one exact moment, but if there had to be an exact moment, it would have to be back in the first season. We watched the first two episodes in the eating area on a big screen sound system. It was the first time that we'd watched the episode, and I just remember the opening scene where it starts off on shot on Spartacus, on Andy, and he's chained up, and the dust just falls down on him, and then the camera pans up as he looks up, and it goes through the roof onto the arena. Oh. And I just remember watching that going, holy shit, this is amazing, this is the show that I'm on. And I always remember that as just such a spine-tingling moment of, wow, I'm on a show that, like, since I've been a kid, I've been watching TV, I've been watching movies and just going, wow, that's amazing. And then to see that and to realize that I was actually a part of one of these shows was amazing. So that, for me, I'd say would be the most memorable. But overall, loved it.
Yeah, that's a special scene. That was,
If you're still interested. After that wonderful, beautiful moment, I'm just going to go back to the gym.
Yeah.
I'd never been to a gym, really, before Spartacus, and obviously it was slap into that extreme thing, and I kind of learnt to love it, although you obviously hate it at times. So I knew as soon as I got back to England, I joined a gym, an old school East London gym. And kept it up, more or less kept up the diet. The thing that changed was because you're back in England, you start drinking more. Ale and stuff. And I've kept it up apart from Christmas and New Year. But the thing is, you notice very quickly how it goes. Yeah, bye, buddy. You remember that, buddy? It's going now. Look at it going. And so it's kind of nice to feel,
You got incredible shape, though. They trashed you. I remember days where Simon could barely function during boot camp because he was on.
I forgot language.
You really did.
When people watch the new season, they will be stunned to hear that because Simon, I mean, we stripped you down right from the start. You look fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah, and thank you for doing that stripping because it needed stripping.
Yeah, but you look incredible. No, it was like I remember that our stunt coordinator Alan Poppleton forced him almost at knife point to eat a banana at one stage because our other trainer had got him so worked up into this no carb, no sugar thing that he was unbelievably dedicated to. That Alan basically threatened him with his life. Eat the damn banana, I will kill you right now.
Alan's a lot harder than me, so.
No, it was amazing. I'm with Dan. That whole experience is still almost like a dream for me. It was just such an incredible piece of
I'd go along
life.
with Dan as well, the whole thing. I mean,
but
pick out moments. But
well, when my stunt double finally said I did a stunt to his liking, because Rachel Vasilev, who is the most amazing person in the world,
those guys, when they compliment you, it means everything, doesn't it?
But especially Rachel, because I would do a take 5 times, and everyone would be happy with it except Rachel. He'd be like, all right, brother, sure. I'm like, this time, he's like, your hand is a little bit, how you say, bit retarded? I'm like, you don't say that, Rachel.
breathe, brother, breathe.
Yeah, I know. It's like a dance, brother. It's like a dance. But and then there's one time, I did this crazy wrestling move in one go, which he didn't think I could do, and I did it well, and he was like, yeah, it's pretty good. And that was probably the happiest day of my life.
I've still got that footage of us rehearsing that fight.
Have you?
In the car park. I can send it to you.
Yeah.
With Rachel in the background going, yes, brother, yes.
Yeah. I still have, I think Manu still has footage of us doing a West Side Story dance routine between the two gladiators. I hope that doesn't service.
That beats it.
Also in a car park.
That'll be 5 million hits on YouTube.
Yeah, I hope not. I paid him handsomely to never show it to anyone.
The reaction to the series around the world was phenomenal. And it's an interesting thing because people don't quite remember that when we first aired, we got slaughtered in the reviews. People hated the show. I mean, and that's putting it mildly. I remember I would search the web for hours looking for one nice comment about the show. When we started off, people didn't like how the characters talked, the language. They didn't like how the show looked. I mean, it was really just a long litany of how much people hated the show.
Wow.
And then, and listen, I'm the first to admit, we got off to a bit of a rocky start. You could see bits and pieces of where it was going. But it really didn't all come together until right around episode 4. And that was the first episode I remember that I watched the cut and I said, okay, now everything is working the way it should. The story is working. We've dialed in the language, the acting, the directing, the stunts, the lighting, everything just came together. And from that point on, I was very happy to see a shift on the internet. And a lot of people started talking about the show, saying, listen, I know it was off to a rocky start, but you really got to go back to it and watch it. It gets really, really good. And then by the end of that first season, I remember after the finale, it was like a joyous outcry of love. It's, and I read a lot of reviews that said it was amazing that from where we started to where we ended in that first season, about what a complete, entertaining, and really powerful show it had become. And then, the most delightful thing to me is finding out that it became an international hit, and we have such a huge fan following all over the world was touching and deeply gratifying.
Yeah, I get recognized mostly just by either European or South American people, to be honest. If it ever happens, it's probably by someone that's from Turkey or from someone that's from South America. Well, the fan in me says bunk to that first 3 episodes comment, because I actually liked it, like I was saying with Dan. That first moment, I was like, I'm in. That's like, I mean, for any rough bits that may have been in those first 3 episodes, from that first scene of Andy underneath the arena, I was like, I don't care, you can do whatever you want, I'm there.
Yeah. And like I said, there's great stuff in those first 3 episodes. It's just that everything, the stew didn't quite come together completely. Sure. But yeah, I mean, that's Simon brings up a good point. Is that for Rob and Josh and Sam and I, we always say that our job number 1 is to entertain the audience, and we really felt that there were premium cable shows on when we started Spartacus that I love, but I got the feeling that the people controlling those channels kind of lost sight that there's an audience. And a lot of times the show's fantastic, but I couldn't escape the feeling that it felt like homework watching it. And I would get to the end of an episode, and the credits would roll, and my reaction would be, "What? That's it? This episode's over?" So approaching Spartacus, I really, really wanted to feel that yes, we had a season-long story that we were telling, but each episode had a beginning, middle, and end. And we ended that episode, but left you wanting to know what happened next. I mean, that's really what we strive to do at the end of each episode. We want the audience to go, "Oh, well, I want another one immediately."
Yeah, well, they just, I mean, I always liked Spartacus, even before I was in it, that it was a show that just gave you permission to enjoy yourself. It didn't say, I love Game of Thrones so much, but I sort of feel like I want to bring a notepad when I watch it. Because I'm like, hang on, who was that? Hang on, he was the guy that did that back then. Okay, right. And it's in a way it's work. It's still an amazingly satisfying show, but it's tougher to watch. Whereas Spartacus, they just go, we just have this way of going, just enjoy it. And if you want to follow the story with a fine-tooth comb, it's all there. But if you just want to watch people get chopped to pieces, it's there too. You can enjoy it on so many levels. I'm really proud that we sort of strive for that. Yeah, that entertainment.
I would like it to be remembered first and foremost that it was damn fun. That it was a joy to watch. Beyond that surface entertainment, I'd like it to be remembered as something a little deeper, something a little more powerful and moving. And I think when people see the series finale, that'll become more evident. Because I think I wrote the series finale. I watched all the dailies. I knew what was happening, and I still cried at the end of it. I mean, I just thought it was just so gut-wrenching and powerful and emotional and sad and uplifting all at the same time. And the bigger picture is I would like people to remember the story of Spartacus. The story of Spartacus has been told several times in the past, and I fully expect this story to be revisited again in movies and television and books. It's a story that I think deserves to be retold again and again and again, and needs to be retold again and again and again. Because no matter how far we go into the future, you can still look into the past. There's going to be oppression and repression, and there's going to be very powerful people who want to maintain that power by standing on the backs of the less fortunate. And I think Spartacus is just the absolute perfect historical story to give people hope. There's my spiel. I don't know how my
Also, if I can just say, I don't think stylistically there's any show like it.
Great.
I'd never seen anything quite like it. I mean, I know it was inspired by 300, but it went beyond that. We were all a little worried about, we very much were inspired by
Zack Snyder's technological leap, the visual leap he took in making 300. And we really wanted to bring that to TV. And I was, early on worried, I wouldn't want to have Zack think, well, we're trying to rip him off. It was very much we wanted to honor what he had done and continue that forward. And I was very happy in the first season. Found out that one of our directors, Rick Jacobson, is a friend of Zack Snyder's. And he said Zack loved the show, loved that we were continuing what he had done. And he actually showed me a picture of Zack Snyder in a Spartacus T-shirt.
Awesome.
Which was...
Nerd alert.
Well,
geekasm.
It's just fantastic because Rob and I especially are just huge fans of what Zack does. And we really wanted to have this show. We started out with a concept of, we wanted it to be like a graphic novel. In those early episodes, you can see that, that's one of the things we had to dial in because I think we went just a bit too far in the graphic novel area. But then, the visual language really started to develop. And there are scenes in Spartacus that are just, achingly beautiful. Last season, there's a scene of Lucretia standing on the balcony, and it's just this wide shot, and the wind blowing a little bit, and it's a huge vista, and it's just gorgeous, and it's hard to believe, like Liam was saying earlier, it's hard to believe that it was all shot inside.
Amazing visual effects. But I hope, that there's a legacy from a television point of view that, TV can be fun, and that's TV's you're allowed to enjoy yourself. And through all the detailed, complicated dramas that they show, that I always liked that Spartacus, it has all of that detail, but its number one edict seems to be, look, sit down, have a great time. And I want more of that in television, personally. As this show ends, I hope that more television can just say, look, have fun, enjoy yourself. And from a message point of view, I hope it's just that, you don't have to accept your position as, pretty much it's an antagonist or protagonist. Crassus doesn't have to accept that the Senate hates him and that he's rich and nobody likes him. Gladiator doesn't have to accept that he's been put in this place and he can't change it. Spartacus doesn't accept that he's been given this fate and can't change it. They all strive to improve their situation, and that's okay. And I think that's an important message. Well, yeah, that whole situation is unmitigatingly horrible. Nobody wants to have their big break, anything like that. But I guess early on, I realized that, that was a decision that wasn't up to me in terms of, Stars wanted to keep going, and if I was the guy, then, I can either take it as this horrible burden, and potentially ruin their show and ruin Andy's amazing legacy, or just say, all right, well, this is my responsibility to try and honor the fantastic character that he's done and try to create something different, but hopefully also special with what I can do. I was already a fan of the show, so I'd watched Andy's performance countless times, and so I always hoped that without trying to copy him, because I think that would just have been a fakery and people wouldn't have liked that at all. I could, be inspired by that and by the 60s Spartacus and by the struggles of people like, either myself or friends and around me that had, the hardship and just try to create a truthful, noble character in some way. I'm a massive nerd. I'm sure everyone can back me up there. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
I had no illusion. I would hate me. Let's put it that way. If obviously it's not exactly something I haven't aimed to replace someone. And just the idea, if you're passionate about a show, you are resistant to change in some way, and I would be if I was watching. And if it was other people, I would have been resistant to that. And so I could have thought about that a lot more, but I quickly worked out that would never help anything that I did, and that would never help the show. So the best thing I could do was just try and, honour the amazing show that Andy and all the others set up in season 1 and Gods of the Arena, and work my butt off to try and do a good job. And, you know, I hope I've done any tiny percent of that. That's all you can do, I guess, is try to do your best in a situation you've got. Oh, I mean, you know, 5 or 6 more seasons of me being Spartacus would be amazing. No. Well, I guess, as with all the cast that are on now, you'd like your character in some way to have a glorious end, and I guess whether that's Crassus's resolution of the war, or for me personally, I just wanted to ultimately be able to put some sort of full stop on the journey that both Andy and myself had sort of tried to champion over all these years. You know, our characters have gone through a hell of a lot, all of the characters in the show, by this time. And regardless of the details of how it ends, I think everyone gets a satisfying conclusion to their personal journey. And, you know, obviously Spartacus doesn't necessarily get all that he wants, which is unusual for a TV show and a unique challenge for an actor and for, I'm sure, a writing team and a production team. But the challenge for all of us was to really, and for me especially, was to find a way to give Spartacus the victory that he wanted. You know, he wanted something from the very beginning, and I truly feel by the end he feels he has it. And that's all I wanted. And I feel that has been created in this show, and that's, I think, one of the things that I love about the finale that we get to. That the characters get what they deserve in a way, in many ways.
Yeah, I totally agree with. Let me just throw this one last thing in. I totally agree with Liam. And part of the previous question, Liam had an impossible task coming in to the role of Spartacus. And we made a decision early on, because the question became, do we write the character differently for Liam? And I felt very strongly, no, we write Spartacus as Spartacus.
Yeah, I'm glad you did.
Liam will bring his own thing to it, his own passion, his own emotion to it, and we'll go from there. And Liam just grew and grew and grew in the character, and culminating in the finale, which I think after many, many episodes of doing fantastic work, the finale, Liam goes above and beyond. Everyone in the cast just goes above and beyond. I thought it was, across the board, best performances I've seen. Just fantastic work.
I think that goes back to what Dan was saying about the pure emotion that was in the air, knowing that we were ending such an iconic series and such a special series for all of us. It created something in all the actors that you know, just escalated everything further.
And it really shows. I think that's this series finale, I think, is really, really going to linger in the minds of the audience for many, many years. I just think it is so incredibly powerful and emotional.
And it was great to work with Liam as well, for me, after knowing him for 6 months but not really doing any scenes with him. And when in that last step, it was fantastic for me to work with him. And I agree with you, Stephen. I thought Liam did an amazing job in just impossible circumstances, but he did it. He nailed it.
Look, but there are. I mean, I think that's one of the hallmarks of this season will be that there are truly astounding performances everywhere. Like, I always felt for the Romans, because they're coming off the backs of some of these iconic, you know, antagonists in Gladiator and Glaber.
Yeah,
but you know,
great.
Yeah, and they're fantastic. And and in the same way that, you know, people say how hard it was for me, it's no less hard for people like Simon and Todd. Yet everything I ever watch from what they do, I constantly go, geez, I need to be better. You know, they're just incredible. So I think that people will be truly impressed by the performances of the cast around me this year. I think, you know, Dan and Pana in their relationship this year just a whole new level, and just create something that you don't get on television. You know, you just don't get it. and they're and Manu and Cynthia and Dustin. Dustin's like a dark horse. I constantly watch his performance, and because I work with him, and I'm like, yeah, he's just a cool dude. And I watch his performance after it's been filmed. You watch it cut together, and you go, wow, there is something truly amazing going on in there. And anyway, I mean, people will see that and make their own decisions. But I'm so lucky to work with the people I work with.
Husk, at du kan finde alle vores tidligere Filmz TV-udsendelser på Filmz under Filmz TV-fanebladet, og også på videovideo.dk, i iTunes og via vores gratis video-app.